Hi again. This is Max, and I'm his mother, Sarah, and today we wanted to make a video about reading. Max is a wonderful young man who has Charge syndrome, and because of this, he has the dual sensory impairment of deaf blindness, and gets by a lot better than what you would think on paper, but we wanted to try to make a series of videos to show you how we communicate, how he gets through this world, and one of the more important things that we'd like to do today is to show you guys about reading. I think of reading as the receptive arm of literacy. And not only is communication important, but communication will connect you with people, but reading will connect him with the rest of the world. The reasons that I would love for Max to be able to read. One is just for the joy of it. Reading is fundamental. Learning how to connect the words with the dots that make the words is a good activity of the mind. And when Maxie uses his mind, he's happier and he's healthier. Another reason is it gives Max an activity that he can do to help him to relive his memories, his fun times, let's say at a park or at the swimming pool. And it also helps to introduce him to people, places, or adventures that he wouldn't otherwise be exposed to within his world. Another reason that would be wonderful if Max could learn how to read is it helps to provide social connections. For instance, when Max and I, when we read at nighttime, Max, we love our time together. It helps to give us focused interaction, and again, it gives him something more to do. And other things, it helps him to keep up with the world events. We can find out what's going on with Trump and the Alaskan pipeline and other important things that are going on in the world. Max might get a party invitation that he would want to read, maybe to a birthday or to a wedding. If he turns into a writer someday, then hopefully we'll be able to understand more about what he's experiencing in his world. Also, there are practical implications for him being able to read. For instance, at school, he has a calendar that he can go to, and this paired with objects and braille, he can read what he can anticipate will go on for his day. Identification, perhaps rooms or elevators, they'll tell you what floor that he needs to go to through the ability to read. Maps, directions, a to-do list. Maybe when we go to the grocery store, we can look over our list and say, hey, did we get the bananas? Did we get the tomatoes? And it helps us as a memory guide. And lastly, inspirational. I'm hoping that Max might be able to read literature that will help to provide guidelines for his life, or maybe even the Bible someday. So Maxie, it's time to read. It's time to read. Yay! Yay! You say no? Well, we're making this video, Max. So we want to show folks how we read, okay? But first, why don't you pick out the book that you want to read? Do you want to read about the giving tree Or do you want to read about face? You want the face? You want the face book? Okay, we could do the face book. Okay, Master has spoken. So when we read, I introduce him to the book. And this book is actually a fairly simple book, and it talks about the face. So typically what we do is Max will feel the picture with his right hand and then the word face. F-A-C-E. Face. Face. Okay, let's turn the page. All right, next page. Eyes. Eyes. E-Y-E-S. Eyes. Yay! Eyes. Eyes. The face has eyes now. Let's turn the page and see what happens next. There we go. Now what do we have? Eyes and nose. Nose, that's right. So, you want your child to be a reader, but it is amazingly difficult to find books that are appropriate. We actually have the American Printing House down the street from us, and they are considered one of the most comprehensive resources for literature for the blind, but they really don't have much in the way of children's books or books that are of the elementary level that are necessary for emerging reading skills such as Max has. So what do? Fortunately, it's actually not that difficult to make your own books, and I thought I could kind of show you what I've learned through personal experience, looking online, getting some ideas. And one of the first things that you're going to need is a Perkins Brailler. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we do our bit on writing, but suffice it to say that this is basically going to translate your words into tactile bumps that hopefully your future reader will be able to appreciate. Now, I actually got a free Perkins Brailler when Max was a baby, and with time, however, it broke down, and so ultimately I bought this one from the American Printing House of the Blind about 2 years ago. It was about $700. I suspect there's probably grants or other resources, you know, if money's a bit tight, that you can access in order to bring one of these into your household. The next thing you need is paper, right? And you need special paper, paper that's a little bit thicker, that will be able to translate the bumps versus just our typical thin paper. And this box of paper, again, came from American Printing House for the Blind. And I'm not sure how many sheets are in it, but lots. And I've had this, again, for a couple of years, and you know, I've only used this much, and there's about this much more to go. So I think it'll hold us pretty well. I got online to try to figure out just how to make a book, and the first couple passes I did were economically pretty feasible. Basically, I used the braille paper, and I used the poster board to make the covers of the books, and then I would do some handwriting as well, and so I would use an awl and some backdrop for that. But some of my first efforts were what I would call memory books, or books that talk about experiences that Max has had that perhaps he would want to relive, perhaps he would enjoy reading about them and make that connection to actually becoming a reader. So, for instance, I have a book about parks. I tried to use simple words and repetition. So I would start a book off with, you know, my name is Max. You know, he can recognize his name in Braille. And I would talk about what he did at the park. I would try to add on tactile cues, like, you know, for the swing set, you know, we would put the chain there. I like to swing. We would collect leaves, and he always loved picking up rocks. So, as I said, that it got the job done. There's one on swimming. I think the swimming, again, it would start off with my name is Max, repetition, repetition. I like to swim. The nice thing about this book is it goes over pretty much the same sentence every time. It just uses a different pool. So that way the repetition will hopefully encourage the memory of the sign. And then the zoo, Max's Bible. And again, this is very much a simple version. This is no King James version. But it just starts with God made the world. And it's 4 pages of what I consider pertinent biblical fact. So the nicest thing about this version is the expense. Besides the paper, there's really virtually no expense at all. We bound it with dental floss. So, but the problem with this version is it's not very hardy. You can't really glue a lot of tactile things in here because it just doesn't have the bulk, the capacity. And there were times, I think I had to pitch a couple of books where Max would just basically use it as a chew toy. And and if he just got one page, basically the whole book would be ruined. So I did sort of evolve into the bookmaking practice. And I started to use binders from Staples. So this isn't a plug for them or anything. I'm sure you could get them any place. But they were relatively inexpensive, especially if you were to get them on sale. But you could get them anywhere from $1 to $4. But the nice thing about using the binder is, one, is it's more resilient. 2, I liked putting, I have some samples over here. I liked being able to put the title page, here and here. If you develop a library, you can kind of keep up with it. I also liked the ability to have more bulk because I like these books to have as much tactile cues and hands-on as possible. And also, if he does, pull out a page or it gets soiled or ruined somehow, you can simply, open and reinsert another page. In order to make these books, I used a couple of things. Again, the braille paper, the Perkins Brailer. Sometimes, like for instance, on this book, I would label things, and if I had to label things, I would use the braille label paper, which is basically plastic, and then I could glue that onto whatever object I was trying to demonstrate to Max. And again, you can get that from the American Printing House for the blind. Anyway, so you use your paper, your Perkins Brailer, you have your hole puncher. I use these little reinforcement for the hole punchers. Again, Max can be pretty tough on these books. And hot glue gun. I mean, basically anything you need is in this area. I'm a bit of a crafter. I think a lot of mothers are. So it really wasn't that much of a stretch for me. But the theme of the books, they still tend to be relatively simple. For instance, the book face that Max was reading, basically that's just a cutout of a face. It has one word, face. And each page adds something new to the face that he can appreciate tactily, and then he can actually read the word. Now, the nice thing specifically about this book is we sign body parts all the time. So my hope is that as we sign, as we fingerspell, as we do the finger pressures on the braille, that, the light bulb will go off that NOSE, knows these bumps mean this thing. Some other books that we've made is like book on counting. Can't forget math. We'll talk more about that. He can pull the apples off the tree and line them up and count them. The flowers, can be pulled from the garden and then counted. And then I'll write a little, there are 3 flowers in the garden. Pick the flowers and put them on this page. So it'll give him some directive if he is up to reading such a paragraph. Shapes, again, some basic ideas. Circle down to the crescent. Triangles can make a diamond. Again, he lives in the world of touch. So keep it as interesting and as relevant as you can. And then one of my favorite stories, The Giving Tree, and it's becoming one of Max's as well. I was surprised he didn't want to read that earlier. But anyways, again, I take this story, and hopefully this doesn't violate a copyright issue. I guess I'll hear about it if it does. But I definitely simplify the story, and the story itself is relatively simple, but even more so, I boil it down to just the salient facts. Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy. Every day the boy would come and play in her leaves, climb her trunk, and eat her apples. And again, this is a shortened version, but it captures the basic idea. Max can feel the little boy. He feels the tree, the leaves. You point out that the apples are still on the tree. And then hopefully each page has a content to it. The boy loved the tree, and the tree loved the boy. So, I show a heart, and Max is able to touch the heart shape. He's able to read the word heart. He's able to read the word love. I'll try to, he actually at this point will read along with me, and I know he's not understanding, all of this myriad of bumps, but he will go back to certain words. I will emphasize certain words that he will review several times, and again, hopefully we'll get the content. And the boy grew. So as I said, you can pick the stories you want. You can pick the theories, the ideas you're trying to convey. But probably the nicest thing about this system is it's totally flexible to whatever you want to teach your little blessed child. And you might think, well, gosh, this is kind of expensive. I mean, if I have to pay a couple dollars for, the binder and, all this. I visit Michael's and Hobby Lobby a lot, but I have, different colors or different textures of fur and stick-ons. But really, even with the cost of that, I figure maybe these books maybe cost $5, maybe $10 to make. But when I looked online, first of all, they just didn't have a lot out there. And secondly, they were pretty expensive. The books I was looking at were anywhere from $30 to $40. So this is still a relatively economical, not to mention a freeing situation. And the most important thing, of course, is helping our children to learn to read. One more thing I'll show you is if you have some books out there that you already enjoy reading, you can adapt them to Braille. In fact, this is Biscuit Visits the Pumpkin Patch, but our dog's name is Duke, so we have that crossed out. We have Max feel what Duke is up to. So Duke is going to go to the pumpkin patch, and we have a little furry, cutout that I just, again, Hobby Lobby has all kinds of goodies and different textures. We have the wagon that Dookie is riding in, and the wheels that he can feel, and then the pumpkins that, he can pick. And, if you have any opportunity to make these books interactive, he can put the pumpkin into the wagon. And there's a painted pumpkin there, and Dookie meets a friend. And actually, one of our friend's dog is named Joy, so we put Joy's name and put a different texture for the fur. So, again, these can be all adapted any way you'd like. And as I said, I think, once again, we're limited only by our imagination.